Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Alex Flood. The district's medical officer of health, Dr. Janet DeMille, is offering her thoughts on the Scotties Tournament of Hearts as the event gets ready for January 28th. Locals may have to wait until the playoff round if they want to catch the Scotties inside the Gardens this year, as only players, coaches, officials, essential operational staff, and volunteers will be allowed inside. The decision for a bubble was made with health and safety as the top priority, but 500 fans may be allowed inside as the province begins to reopen on the 31st. DeMille is glad to see the Scotties still able to operate despite the concerns surrounding COVID.
They need to do the right things to keep all the people involved safe. And that bubble concept is a reasonable one to use, and it has been successful in other places. And I think, it is an important championship that occurs every year. And I was glad to see that it would still be able to go ahead this year.
Planning for the bubble is still in the works, and even though there are questions surrounding fan attendance, you can still catch all the tournament action through the nationally televised broadcast. Students across Ontario returned to in-class learning this week, following a brief switch to online in the wake of the Omicron surge. The infectious variant has led to N95 masks being given to teachers and more HEPA filters installed in classrooms. And as Adam Riley reports, the two school boards along the North Shore are also having to strategize for potential staff shortages as the result of the virus.
The first day back went actually better than we thought it would, so we're very happy about that.
The last 2 weeks have given both the public and Catholic school boards in the North Shore region the time needed to prepare for in-class learning in the Omicron era of the COVID-19 pandemic. It didn't, however, help with staffing issues due to being sick or isolating as a result of an exposure, according to Superior North Catholic Director of Education Maria Vazzanelli, who is also praising staff for their efforts over the last 2 years.
They have been at the top of their game through this crisis. With Omicron, I'm not sure when the peak is. I'm hearing that it could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. I think once we are over the peak, our staffing issues would stabilize.
Superior Greenstone's Nicole Morden-Cormier agrees with Vazzanelli, adding the school boards in the north were already short-staffed prior to COVID, and the virus and its insidious nature have further strained those staffing shortages. Thus, they have resorted to new strategies to mitigate the issue.
We have a process in place where we're able to collapse classes, bring them together in cohort situations. We have additional staff that we've brought into all of our schools where that staff has been available. And every evening and every morning, we're monitoring to see which of our staff are not able to attend work.
Fortunately, Morden-Cormier says they haven't had to resort to those measures so far, and both boards are benefiting from a smaller student body in their schools, making social distancing much easier to achieve. She adds there will be many challenges ahead, but with the right strategy, they will be able to get through this.
Will it be perfect? Absolutely not. Will we be able to bring our students into the school every single day? That may not happen, but we're going to avoid that at all costs.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
Work is still happening behind the scenes on a proposed mining development in the Marathon area as the project works its way through the public consultation process. Generation Mining has its hopes set on an open-pit palladium mine located north of Marathon, which could bring almost 1,000 jobs to the area should the project get the go-ahead. Part of the process to determine if that will happen is the public input sessions, where residents and organizations can present their support or opposition to the project. The Impact Agency of Canada recently held a virtual meeting to provide info to anyone planning to attend the input session, to lay out rules and provide advice to presenters. One of the questions came from Marathon Mayor Rick Dumas, who questioned the agency's decision to delay the proceedings by a month due to the Omicron variant, instead of shifting to a virtual platform in the same timeline as done before. But despite his frustration about the delay, Dumas believes the session was beneficial for those who will be presenting to the panel.
To give the participants in on the virtual session an overview of what's going to take place. I also seen a lot of government officials on the site, So there was a lot of participation from different agencies within the provincial and federal governments. I also asked a question I didn't get an answer for was in regards to the process. If it was wrapped up in 10 days, could we get the hearings be done with? Do we need to extend it for the 30 days just to wait for people to submit more requests? So that wasn't really answered, but that's okay. I'm okay. The process is what it is.
Public hearings will begin on March 14th, and if it gets the go-ahead, the proposed mine could begin production late next year. In other news across the north, NASM researchers have launched a new study that they're hoping will boost vaccine confidence among Indigenous youth. It's going to take place over 2 years and will start with youth on Manitoulin Island. CTV's Ian Campbell has more.
It's become the key in this pandemic. Canadians have been told over and over again to get vaccinated. Researchers now are going to be taking a look at how to boost vaccine confidence among Indigenous youth on Manitoulin Island.
Lots of people got vaccinated, but just like in other areas, it's young people and youth are the ones who are just a little bit less vaccinated. And that's, amongst Indigenous people, but also in mainstream as well.
It's one reason why Mar, along with her colleague family physician Dr. Maurianne Reid, are looking at Indigenous youth. Dr. Reid says Indigenous people make up a large portion of the island population, and there's a lot that needs to be understood.
People's ideas and motivations and what really inspires them to maybe to be involved in either as receiving a vaccine or even becoming involved in vaccine trials.
For that reason, we have also we are involving with an Indigenous theatre group. So that's the Bajamanjig on Manitoulin Island, to try and figure out, how can we best engage with youth.
The researchers plan to use surveys and theater-based engagement sessions to better understand lived experiences. They're starting with the island, and if other partners come on board, they'll then expand out. But for now, it's got the support of local leadership.
And it's these pieces that have that local content that start to build the trust amongst communities, because these are physicians we trust locally.
The work is being funded through the Canadian Institutes for Health Research over the next 2 years. The team plans to share its findings with Indigenous communities and with the public health sector across the country. Ian Campbell, CTV News, Sudbury.
In Sault Ste. Marie, the Sault Area Hospital has piloted a Caregiver ID program that sees primary caregivers designated as essential, with the goal to improve communication between medical workers and caregivers. CTV's Christian Davino has more.
The Sault Area Hospital says caregivers wanted a change with COVID restrictions limiting visitations earlier in the pandemic. And together with the Algoma Ontario Health team, it was able to create the Caregiver ID program.
So it really became evident that we needed to look for ways to eliminate any of those barriers that they might have, right across the system of Algoma, and look for ways that patients and their caregivers could be reunited.
Last year, 30 caregivers were given the identification cards to help medical staff quickly recognize them. The cards also designated caregivers as essential, allowing them to perform their roles through the pandemic.
The Caregiver ID with the lanyard and the badge really became that quick recognition that if a caregiver was in possession of the ID badge, that we knew that they had been a part of the program.
The hospital and health team adapted the ID program from the Ontario Caregiver Organization. It was created with the intent of bringing it to other regions and is now gaining traction throughout the province.
We have 33 settings who are engaged in our learning collaborative, who are implementing at various stages the Partners in Care tools.
Sault Area Hospital says the ID program was a huge success last year and has been working towards growing it throughout Algoma. As of this year, over 250 caregivers have been given the essential designation. Christian Davino, CTV News, Sault Ste. Marie.
Most people have seen an Inukshuks driving down the highway, but down at Silver Harbor Conservation Area are some one-of-a-kind Inukshuks that are completely made out of ice. And it's become somewhat of a tradition for the winter Inukshuks to be built down at the Silver Harbor Conservation Area, as this year, dozens of them have been built down by the shore. No one knows who started this winter trend, but locals have been flocking down to the harbor to catch a glimpse or to build an Inukshuk of their own. In addition, local photographers have been loving the area as it provides stunning visuals with a backdrop of the sleeping giant, and with the sun hitting the ice in just the right spot, it's created some extraordinary pictures. With dozens of locals down at the harbor, we asked them what they thought about the ice Inukshuks.
Oh, it's cool. Like it's neat that people made them, eh? Yeah. Cool.
It makes for entertaining afternoon. He absolutely loves coming to see the ice, so it's been fun.
They look amazing.
What's your favorite part of them?
Because people make them so tall.
Oh, this is my second time coming down, and there's a lot more now than there was the first time I came down. They're beautiful. The sun glistens on the ice, and it's everybody should come down and take a look.
The winter sculptures will stay down at the Silver Harbor Conservation Area and will most likely grow in numbers so long as the cold temperatures continue. Join now with Kurt Black. Kurt, when you think of an Inukshuk, often people think of Canada, of course. And when you think of Thunder Bay, many people immediately think of the Stahl brothers. One of them, he's in the headlines these days.
Ooh, and it's going to get a lot of people around Thunder Bay very, very excited, as it appears that Eric Stahl, he may just be Beijing bound. We'll have more right after the break.